This is part 3 of our midlife lecture. So as we age, we have changing priorities. Generativity versus stagnation is Erikson's next stage of identity. Middle-aged people tend to report that they are more concerned with helping younger people succeed than getting ahead themselves. This is the idea of generativity. Being productive by helping others to ensure the continuation of society by guiding the next generation. So we could achieve generativity through parenting, mentoring, or creating a legacy of doing something of lasting importance. Essentially, it's passing something on to the next generation. The opposite of this is stagnation. This is the state in which people are unable to deal with the needs of their children or to provide mentoring to younger adults. Maybe they're bored, self-indulgent, or unable to contribute to society. So generative people, generativity is different from personality traits. It's more related to societal engagement rather than personality. Generativity results from interconnections among social and inner forces. So this is the desire to create a product or outcome that outlives yourself. The desire to selflessly bestow your efforts as a gift to the next generation. So what makes a person get a sense of satisfaction from generative actions? Well, they construct a life story or a narrative that becomes part of their identity. So this is a model. So different parts of this model relate differently to personality traits. So concern for the next generation. This is an interest in caring for younger generations. Okay. Action is actual behaviors that promote the well-being of a younger person. So concern relates to life satisfaction and overall happiness, but action does not. Okay, what does this mean? For example, grandparents may derive a lot of satisfaction from grandchildren and have concern for their well-being, but have little desire to care for them regularly. They don't want to take the action. Okay? So when we have concern, this may create a commitment that we want to do, which may interact with belief and action. And all those things interact with the cultural demand. Your culture tells you how concerned you should be, how much action you should do, and your inner desire. So this is your need to be needed. How much do you want to do something? And that also influences your concern and your action. And this whole model together, so here's the source of your motivation, your thoughts, and then your actual behavior. And then over here is the meaning you get from your work. This is the narrative you create of your life. And these findings have been found in many cultures. So the effects of generativity. Personal concerns of middle-aged adults are different from younger adults. Generativity is a stronger predictor of emotional and physical well-being in middle and older adults than in younger adults. So this idea of generativity is more important to physical and psychological well-being in middle and older age. It's associated with positive emotion and satisfaction with life and work, and it predicts physical health. Generativity seems to be more complex than Erikson originally suggested, and it may not diminish in late life as he thought it did. Life transitions. So what do you think? Is the midlife crisis a real thing? We've all heard about it, but is it real? Not really. No such thing as a universal midlife crisis. There is a reorganization of self and values, but these changes may not be based on age. It's not necessarily based on being middle-aged. Rather, they follow cognitive changes or a gain in cognitive complexity. So instead of calling it a midlife crisis, let's call it a midlife correction. This is reevaluating one's roles and dreams and making the necessary corrections. An example might be a woman who stayed home to raise the children, but begins to feel regret for not having a career, so she goes to college. I'm sure you can think of another example. It might just be changing careers or changing your relationships, something like that. It's a reevaluation of your life and you're trying to fix it. Midlife is a time of gains and losses. It's a time of change and transition. So your competence, your ability to handle stress, sense of personal control, your purpose in life, and social responsibility are all at their peak. They're all at their highest. But physical abilities, a woman's ability to bear children, and physical appearance undergo changes that many people view as negative, that they view as a loss. The exact timing of these changes are not fixed. They happen at different times for different people, and they can occur over long periods of time. And remember, change can be positive and negative at the same time. Midlife shouldn't be viewed as a time of crisis, but rather a period during which life acquires new meanings. So now we're going to talk about family in middle age. So the idea of letting go. Middle age is a time for a lot of family issues. This tends to be called the sandwich generation. They're caught between the competing demands of their aging parents and their children. So they have people to take care of on both sides. They often act as what your book calls a kin keeper, or the person who keeps the rest of the family in contact with each other. Think about your family. There's probably someone in your family who you could identify as the kin keeper. They're the ones who keep everybody in touch. They're like the link that holds everybody together. Mothers are more likely to be the kin keeper than the fathers. They're the pin that holds the family together. Without them, other family members might drift apart. For most middle-aged parents, the empty nest is the major child-related issue. To help the child's transition, either to college or to the workforce or to their own apartment, parents need to foster and approve the child's attempts at being independent. We've talked about this from the adolescent's perspective before. Now we're talking about it from the parent's perspective. Letting children leave is important, but it can be emotionally difficult for the parents. Mothers in all ethnic groups report feeling sad when children leave, but they have positive feelings about the potential for growth in their relationship with the child. So even though the child is gone, parents still provide emotional support and often financial support whenever they can. So think about how often you called your parents after moving out. Some people call their parents frequently, even after they live in a new house or a new apartment or go off to college. And that's a sign of a good relationship. It's a sign of a secure attachment with your parents. Parents tend to view their children as successful when the children have met the culturally based expectations of the parents. So different cultures have different expectations of what children should be. And so if a child meets that cultural expectations, parents tend to view their children as successful. Children are seen as good kids when their values match their parents. But remember, there are different successful expectations in different cultures. In some cultures, being successful means moving out and finding a job, having financial independence. In other cultures, it might mean getting married and having children. Okay, so there are a lot of different cultural ideas of what it means to be successful. So what happens when children come back? This is becoming more common. We talk about this a lot when discussing millennials. It's called like boomerang kids, kids who left the house and then moved back in with their parents. So roughly half of young adults in the US move back in with their parents at least once. So what are some reasons children might move back in with their parents? Well, the increased cost of living. In some cities and some states, an apartment is really, really expensive, especially when paired with incredible college debt. Okay, so maybe they move back in with their parents to save money. Maybe they can't find a job. Maybe a relationship ended and they need somewhere to live while that gets sorted. Most of the time this is viewed as a temporary arrangement. But how do parents react when their kids come back? Does that reaction depend on culture, the parent-child relationship? Okay, this was something we were going to discuss in class. But each family has to come to its own decisions about whether a child moving back in with the parents is a good idea. There is no universal answer. There's no one right way and one wrong way. It really depends on the culture and the family and the relationship. So giving back. Now for the other side of the sandwich. On one side of the sandwich is the children. On the other side is the aging parents. Okay? So most middle-aged people have parents who are in reasonably good health. Many parents require some level of care, however. That usually falls onto the daughter or the daughter-in-law. In Japan, for example, the oldest son is responsible for caring for his parents, but it is his wife that provides the day-to-day care for both her parents and for her in-laws. So is this fair? Remember our division of labor discussion about how women tend to do more around the home? The next is filial obligation. This is a sense of responsibility to care for one's parents. Many caregivers say they feel like they owe it to their parents. After all, their parents cared for them for so many years. Adult children provide the majority of care to their parents in Western and non-Western cultures studied, but especially in Asian and Latino cultures. Remember when we talked about extended families? So wherever extended families are more prevalent, you see children providing care for their older parents more often. Stresses. The need to care for both children and parents can create stress and conflict. It can be expensive to care for ailing parents, especially for those who have to miss work to do so. So they could have lost wages, lost retirement benefits. There can be conflict, especially between daughters and mothers, over how much care the one thinks the mother needs and unsolicited advice for the mother. So maybe the daughter thinks the mother needs more care than the mother thinks she needs. Or the mother or the mother-in-law is trying to give advice on how to raise the children or how to take care of the advice, and that really causes conflict between mother and daughter. Adult children may experience trouble coping with the decline of their parents' health and functioning, especially when the problems are with cognitive abilities or behaviors. If the child perceives the caregiving as interfering with the other aspects of their life, such as their spouse, their children, or their job, then the entire situation is more likely to be perceived negatively and create more conflicts. So again, it's not the situation itself, it's how we perceive it. This can also lead to economic difficulties, a loss of self-identity, and decreased competence. If you're stressed or distracted by caring for your parents, are you going to be as good at your job? So many feel depressed, resentful, angry, or guilty, or all of these all at once while taking care of their parents. Rewards. Caring for parents may bring everyone closer together. It provides a way for adult children to feel they're giving back. And for some adults, caring for parents can be very rewarding. And again, the culture matters and how rewarding they see it is. So cultural values. How might these influence the effects of caring for parents? Well, caregivers in all cultures show a common set of outcomes. Caregiver stresses are seen as burdensome, which creates negative health consequences for the caregiver. Culture determines the amount of social support one receives, for example, from your extended family, the social structures that are in place, how the culture perceives the older adults. Does the culture see older adults as a burden or as a blessing? In cultures where independence and autonomy are important, the parent who needs care may struggle because they've lost their independence, they've lost the ability to do things for themselves, and they may have a hard time with that. So they may insist on paying for professional care rather than take help from their children. They may find it demeaning to move in with their children and only move in as a last resort. In cultures that support the acceptance of health, mostly family-oriented cultures, those negative feelings are lessened. So culture really matters on how both the aging parent and the middle-aged child who's taking care of the parent perceive the situation and how they react to it. Okay, we will finish this in the next lecture.